composer and a former teacher of mine at Manatee School for the Arts.
Hi.
All right. So, when do you first remember hearing Bossa Nova and Samba?
I was very young. I was born in 1961. That was right in the midst of, the Cold War and everything. But the Bossa Nova scene was was really popular around that time. So I think I first remembered hearing probably Girl from Ipanema or something like that. I remember being at a really swanky department store with my mom. It's called Lord and Taylor up in Falls Church, Virginia, where I grew up. And they had the Bossa Nova stuff going, and it was you could pretty much hear it everywhere, just if you were in a store or whatever. And all I remember associating with it was really elegant women in very high spike heels shopping. Because it just, that was an image for me that stuck with me for a long time. I had an aunt that lived up there. She was kind of wealthy, I guess. So she would go to those department stores or whatever. So I'd go with my mom. She didn't go to those kind of department stores very much. But anyway, that was when I first heard it.
All right. You've written quite a few Bossa Nova and Samba inspired pieces. And so what was it about those styles of music that inspired you to write that?
Well, for one thing, Bossa Nova in particular is kind of a guitar. The way I understand it, I'm not an expert on it, but it is definitely a guitar-centered style of music. It's sort of the Bossa Nova accompaniment on the guitar is sort of central to it. And as far as jazz is concerned, sort of Bossa Nova is kind of considered a type of jazz, but most types of American jazz from USA are not guitar. They didn't originate with guitar. It's not a guitar. Is a relatively recent newcomer to jazz. But in Brazil, the guitar was very, very popular, obviously, and used a lot, and a lot of people had guitars rather than pianos. Anyway, but that's so you said how did it impact me?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when I first heard people like Charlie Bird, who's a DC guy, he used to play with Stan Getz and Charlie Bird. They had a very successful run with Bossa Nova music, and I heard that, and I later studied at his music store down in DC. Anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
Kind of already went over this, but what comes to your mind when you hear Bossa Nova and Samba?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just elegance, For me, it's just sort of it's like a casual kind of elegance. It's not like a formal kind of elegance. Just a sort of a, These, like I said, I was at the department store with these women with fancy dresses and, not like formal, but spike heels and stuff like that. And of course, I think of, like the beaches in Rio de Janeiro and things. The typical kind of visual images you might get from Bossa Nova. I've never been to Brazil, so I don't know what I would think of now if I actually went to Brazil. But anyway, it's very elegant music.
What are some distinguishing factors between Bossa Nova and Samba, because they are different?
Well, I'll kind of quote. I asked the same question to Marco Pereira, who's a really great Brazilian guitarist, and he came to Nashville when I was living in Nashville. He came to Nashville and put a concert on, and he played a lot of Bossa Nova and Samba music. And I asked him, I said, so what? I knew that they were basically the same. He said that Bossa Nova was more of a marketing thing, that it was a style of music it is just sort of more laid back and more sort of, I guess, upscale, you might say. Samba being sort of a more folk type music in a way. And Bossa Nova is samba, is what he said. Bossa Nova is a samba, but it's just slower, and it's, maybe the tonal vocabulary is more complicated, sophisticated, more borrowing from jazz. So it's smoother. Yeah.
All right. And do you find any elements of bossa nova and samba like present in jazz? And do you have any favorite jazz musicians who are inspired by these styles?
Oh yeah. So I mentioned Stan Getz before, the saxophone player back in the late 50s I think it's the late 50s, early 60s was getting into that. It's touched almost a lot of any of the big players who lived through, I'd say, the cool jazz period or whatever. It seems like they all had some sort of bossa nova influence. Even you can even hear it in Pat Metheny. You can hear it in even more popular music. Some of the like Steely Dan stuff has some bossa influences. It's amazing how you'll hear it in things. Old game shows. If you listen to old game show themes, a lot of those are bossas and sambas. It's very, very popular. It's just feel good kind of music.
So, what makes a piece of music like a bossa in the bossa nova style or samba style?
Well, the bossa, I think, is technically supposed to be in 2/4 time, and you have a sort of like with the samba, you have the accent on 2, really, and that's with the surdo drum. You'll see it in the Carnival parades, a big drum, boom, so it's 1, 2, and they hit that big drum, boom, boom, and that's more of a samba, that's the way I understand it, more of a samba thing, but the bossa has it too. It's a little more subtle, though. It's not. Bossa's a little more. It seems a little more introverted rather than samba. Samba's a really, kind of a party thing. I'm really sort of simplifying this, but that's the way I understand it.
Are there any elements of these styles of music that you have carried over into your music writing?
Oh yeah. So I have a Samba Vacation. It's pretty straightforward a samba. Even though I was told by George Morel, who's an Argentinian composer, and he told me that it was similar to something else. I can't remember what he called it. A Maxise or something like that. I may have that wrong. But I don't know, it sounded like a samba to me, so I call it Samba Vacation. And then Rafaela's a bossa nova piece that I wrote. And the bossas, I would say, also generally have a more complex tonal vocabulary. There's more quote-unquote jazz chords, extended chords, altered chords, like flat 9, sharp 9, sharp 5, flat 5 chords, and then rather than samba seems to be more because I think it's an older style. It has more of a different thing. So yeah, it's influenced me a lot because it feels really good in your hands. So there's an alternating bass thing going on.
Yeah.
So it's very guitaristic, very guitar friendly music.
Have you ever thought about trying to write a fusion between bossa nova and another genre of music, or?
Well, that's interesting. I have elements of these things that just kind of bleed over into other pieces that just kind of shows up, not consciously. I haven't ever really consciously sat down and said I'm going to fuse bossa nova with, something else, so like a swing or something. I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I'm willing to try anything. but mostly it just comes sort of naturally.
I guess I already kind of asked this question in a different form, but why do you personally enjoy listening to sort of Spanish and Portuguese style of music?
Well, those. First of all, I would probably really make a distinguish between Spanish and Portuguese. I think. I think that the Spanish kind of depends on what you mean. I like really. I guess what it is I like all the sort of harmonic minor stuff and the dance forms that they have. There's a lot of harmonic minor and modes of harmonic minor, and like in flamenco, there's those things. But actually, as far as flamenco is concerned, I kind of lost some interest in flamenco when I started playing the oud, because the oud, and I started playing a lot of Middle Eastern music or Turkish, Armenian style oud playing, because I felt like the flamenco had sort of borrowed some of that stuff, and in a way, flamenco's its own art form, obviously, but it some of the things that I thought the guitar was trying to do in flamenco kind of reminded me of what the oud does.
Yeah.
And so I became kind of more interested in that. I never have really thought about why I, really enjoy listening to that, those kinds of music. I don't know much about Portuguese music, fado, for example. I don't know much about it, and I think Brazilian music is really Afro-Brazilian.
Yeah.
It's probably borrows as much from Africa than it does Portugal. I don't really know. I'm not too qualified to say on that.
And then the last question for you is, do you have a favorite composer in these genres, or what do you like?
You mean in bossa?
Yeah, in bossa and samba.
Well, Untitled